For almost the entire history of our kind, you were never the only kind. If you had been born 50,000 years ago, and you walked far enough in any direction, you would eventually have met a person who was not your kind of person. Not a stranger from another tribe, a stranger from another species. Someone who walked upright, made tools, buried their dead, sat around a fire at night the same way you did, and was, biologically, not human in the way you are human. There were at least 4 kinds of us back then, maybe more, and every single one of them is gone now, except you. This is the story of what it was like to live on an Earth that had company, and how it felt, eventually, to be the last ones standing. Let's start with the world itself. Picture the planet around 50,000 years ago. The Ice Age is in full grip. Sea levels are low, so coastlines reach out farther than they do today, and land bridges connect places that are islands now. Enormous animals move across the landscape. Mammoths, woolly rhinos, giant deer with antlers wider than a car. And scattered thinly across this cold, huge, dangerous world are small bands of people. But not all the same people. In Europe and Western Asia, there were the Neanderthals. Forget the slouching cavemen from old textbooks. A Neanderthal would have looked startlingly familiar and startlingly different at the same time. Shorter than you, but heavier. Thick-boned, barrel-chested, built like someone who could lift the back of a truck. Bigger nose, sloping forehead, a strong brow. And here's the part that surprises people. Their brains were, on average, slightly larger than ours. These were not dim brutes. They made tools, they controlled fire, they wore clothing, treated wounds, cared for their injured and elderly, and buried their dead with what looks like ritual. Some of them made jewelry. There's a cave in Spain with paintings on the wall that were made tens of thousands of years before any modern human arrived in the area, which means a Neanderthal stood in the dark, holding a light, and decided to make art. They had survived in Ice Age Europe for more than 300,000 years. That is longer than our own species has existed. By any reasonable measure, when our ancestors first walked into their territory, the Neanderthals were the established locals, and we were the newcomers. Now travel east, far east, across Asia, and here we meet the strangest of the 4. Because for the longest time, we didn't even know they existed, the Denisovans. We found them almost by accident. In a cave in the mountains of Siberia, researchers dug up a single fragment of a finger bone and a couple of teeth. That's nearly all there was. No skull, no skeleton, just scraps. But when scientists pulled DNA out of that tiny finger bone, the result stopped them cold. It didn't match us. It didn't match Neanderthals. It belonged to a whole separate kind of human that nobody had ever known about. A species discovered not from its bones, but from its genetic code. Ghosts who left almost no body behind, only a message written inside their cells. We now think the Denisovans ranged across a huge stretch of Asia, possibly from the freezing mountains of Siberia all the way to the steaming tropics of Southeast Asia. They adapted to thin mountain air. They lasted for ages. And we still don't really know what their faces looked like. Try to sit with that for a second. An entire kind of human being spread across half a continent, and we can barely picture them. Then go further still, out into the islands of Indonesia. And here the story turns almost unbelievable. On an island called Flores, there lived a kind of human that stood barely over 3 feet tall. Adults, fully grown, about the height of a modern toddler. Scientists nicknamed them the hobbits. Their brains were tiny, about the size of a chimpanzee's, and yet they made stone tools and hunted on their island home, surrounded by other strange, shrunken creatures. Because isolated islands do odd things to evolution. There were miniature elephants there, and giant rats. And, walking among them, these tiny, clever, upright people. Imagine being a tall newcomer, stepping onto that beach for the first time, and meeting them. People like you in every way that mattered. Using fire, making tools, raising children, and yet small enough to look up at you from the height of your waist. It would have felt like stepping into a myth, and it was real. So that's the cast. Us, the Neanderthals in the west, the Denisovans in the east, the tiny people of Flores. 4 kinds of humans, all alive at the same time, all sharing one planet. For a brief, astonishing window, you could have crossed the world and met all of them. Now here is the question that really matters. What happened when these worlds touched? What was it actually like when one kind of human met another? For a long time, the easy assumption was war, that we showed up and we wiped them out. End of story. But the truth is stranger and far more intimate than that, because we have proof, written again in DNA, that when these different kinds of humans met, at least some of the time, they didn't just fight. They fell in love. Or at least, they had children together. We know this because those children's genes survived. If your family roots lie outside of Africa, then roughly 1 to 2% of your entire DNA is Neanderthal. Not metaphorically, literally. Tucked inside your chromosomes right now are stretches of genetic code inherited from a Neanderthal ancestor who lived tens of thousands of years ago. And if your heritage traces to parts of Asia or the Pacific Islands, you may also carry Denisovan DNA, pieces of those Siberian ghosts passed down through hundreds of generations, all the way to you. Think about what that means. Somewhere back along your family line, there was a moment, two people from two different kinds of humanity who by every old assumption should have been enemies, instead chose each other. And the proof of that single ancient encounter is sitting inside your body as you listen to this. Some of that inherited code still does real work. Certain Denisovan genes help people survive at extreme high altitude, in places like the Tibetan Plateau, where the air is dangerously thin. Some Neanderthal genes shaped how our immune systems fight disease. These vanished species are not entirely vanished. They are still, quietly, helping their descendants live. But here we have to face the harder part of the story, because for all that closeness, the others did fade. One by one, they slipped away. The tiny people of Flores disappeared, the Denisovans faded out, and the Neanderthals, those tough, brilliant survivors who had ruled Ice Age Europe for hundreds of thousands of years, dwindled, and then were gone around 40,000 years ago. Why? We honestly don't fully know. It probably wasn't one dramatic cause. It was likely many small disadvantages stacking up. Our species may have had slightly larger social networks, trading goods and ideas across longer distances, so a good invention could spread instead of dying with the band that thought of it. We may have had a small edge in numbers, or in flexibility, or in how we shared what we knew. Climate was swinging violently. Resources were thin, and when two kinds of people need the same valley, the same animals, the same shelter, the one with even a tiny advantage, slowly, generation by generation, pushes the other toward the edge. Not always with violence, sometimes just by being there, and needing the same things, and lasting a little longer. And so we come to the loneliest image in the whole human story. Somewhere, at some point, there was a last Neanderthal, a final individual of a kind of human that had existed for 300,000 years. Maybe an old person sitting by a fire on a cold coast in southern Europe, the last of their family, the last of their people, the last mind of their entire kind that would ever look out at the world. They could not have known they were the last, but they were. And when that fire went out, an entire way of being human went out with it, forever. The same thing happened in its own quiet way to the Denisovans and to the little people of Flores. One by one, the lights went out across the earth until only a single kind of human was left awake in the dark. Us. And that is the strange inheritance we live with, even though we almost never think about it. We are not just the most successful kind of human. We are the only kind of human. We are what's left. For tens of thousands of years now, we have had the entire planet to ourselves, with no one else like but unlike us to meet on the far side of a mountain. We are, in the deepest sense, alone, the sole survivors of a family that once had many branches. We tend to assume it was always this way, that human simply means us and always has, but that's an illusion created by the fact that we won. For almost the whole story, the world was shared. Being the only ones is the new thing. It's the exception, not the rule. So the next time you feel like the only one of your kind in a room, out of place, surrounded by people who don't quite see the world the way you do, remember that your ancestors knew that feeling on a scale you can barely imagine. They lived in a world full of other minds, other kinds, other ways of being a person. And they didn't just survive that world. They reached across it. They held the hands of strangers who weren't even the same species, and they carried something of those strangers forward. Which means you are not the clean, separate, single thing you might have thought you were. You are a blend, a meeting point, the living result of ancient encounters between kinds of humans who are otherwise gone from the Earth entirely. The others didn't completely vanish. A little of them made it. A little of them is still here. A little of them is you.